I can't believe how ready I am to do this, considering the fact that I'm operating on only 2 hours sleep. But I guess I'm excited. So let's go.
We can't tell. Yes, a lot to discuss coming up on the show. Donald Trump's comments on locker room talk is getting buzz around the sports world. Don't miss our discussion on locker room culture and that a little bit later in the show. But we're starting with Monday Night Football. Bucks rookie kicker Roberto Aguayo redeemed himself after missing 2 field goals early in last night's game, kicking a game winner as time expired as the Bucks defeated the Cam Newton-less Panthers 17-14. Newton was sidelined after suffering a concussion in Week 4. So now a year removed from a Super Bowl appearance, and the Panthers are 1-4, their worst start since 2012, putting them last in the NFC South. The Panthers faced the division foe Saints in the Superdome on Sunday. Max, want to start with you.
Yep.
Can Cam save this season for Carolina?
No, I don't think he can. The problem is, if I were to tell you to begin with that you're in an 11-game season, Stephen A., and you're going to spot the Falcons the way they've looked 3 games in an 11-game season. Go ahead. They get a 3-game lead. You got 11 games to play. That's unlikely you're going to overtake them. So you're really looking at a wild card, I think. I think the Packers are going to be right there. And as it turns out, the NFC East isn't as bad as we thought. And even if it is, and this is an illusion, you got a 4-1 team, you got a 3-1 team. The records are just going to be hard to overcome. Furthermore, Cam missed this week because of a concussion protocol. That's not something that just goes away. That's something that's going to be there all season. And the likelihood of another incident, knock wood it doesn't happen, but the likelihood of another incident, not only playing behind that line, which went from good to bad in a hurry, but also the fact that he plays out of the pocket so much because they rely on him as their de facto running back, and he gets hit so much more than any other quarterback in football by miles. He gets hit more than Andrew Luck, more than Russell Wilson, more than any other quarterback who's mobile and also plays out of the pocket, more than any other quarterback who does that with a bad offensive line. I think that adds up to potential trouble going forward, not to mention the fact that the worry that they could be suffering from an NFC championship hangover. I mean, you'd hope the fact that they didn't win the Super Bowl would have motivated them, but there was always the chance that having had so much success, 2 losses, including the Super Bowl loss, only 2 losses on the season, maybe there'd be a hangover. And in fact, that's what you have seen so far, I think. This is a very physically big team who sometimes give me the impression, Benjamin on his routes, Cam, whether he's holding the ball, waiting a little too long, or running outside the pocket, they give me the impression that they think that they can just go out there and kind of impose their physical selves on their opponents. That's not the way it works. I don't see how Cam can right this ship in time to have a good enough record to make these playoffs.
Max Kellerman, I'm going to disagree with you, but I'm going to openly confess and admit, which is something I don't normally do, that I have a significant degree of trepidation as to whether or not I'm right in saying this. I usually believe unequivocally that I'm absolutely right. That usually proves to be true because we all know I'm usually beating you up during debates. But on this particular day, I must confess to you that I do have concerns that my position may not be but so strong in this. Panthers defense was poor last night. It was poor against the run. Coming into the game, it was poor against the pass. The decision to let Josh Norman go may come down as one of the all-time blunders because clearly their secondary simply is not the same. The front 7 has to overcompensate. As a result, their defense is out of whack. Teams know it. And on a week-to-week basis, whether it's the passing game or the running game, somebody always finds themselves taking advantage of the Carolina Panthers defense. And the offense ain't that much greater. Without Jonathan Stewart, they can't seem to run the ball effectively. Otis Payne, got 85 yards rushing. And everybody wants to act like this a cause for celebration. These guys are simply not in sync. There were 4 turnovers. 3 was by a backup quarterback and Derek Anderson. That's why he's a backup, because we all know he's had that in him, because he had that in him in his career long before Cam Newton ever arrived. And, of course, Cam Newton wasn't playing last night because he's a bit concussed. So we take all of those things into consideration, and it's clear that there's a lot of situations that you could look at the Carolina Panthers and say, you know what, they're in a world of trouble. But what I would say to you is this. They still have New Orleans on their schedule twice. They still got another date against Atlanta at least one time, along with Tampa. And I look at the Carolina Panthers, and I say to myself, as tough as their schedule may be, having to go against the NFC West as well, having, I think San Diego on their schedule as well, along with a couple of other teams in the AFC West. I just look at it from the standpoint that Desperate times call for desperate measures. And if Cam Newton is that first-tier quarterback that you say he is, Max Kellerman, remember, I'm the one that said he's second-tier. You said he's first-tier.
You're also the one who said they were going to win the Super Bowl. You also said Carolina going to win the Super Bowl.
Hold on, wait a minute. You don't get to bring that up on me right now because, again,
I'll
I'm
be
still
the guy
holding
who
on
says
for dear
Cam
life.
Newton's tier 1. You'll be the guy who says the Panthers going to win the Super Bowl. How's that?
That's right.
Okay,
That's
good.
right. But I'm saying to you that before you so rudely interrupted me, I am conceding and confessing to you. I know what my pick was. I am struggling with it. It is hurting me right now. I got it. But I got to hold on to what I hold on to. And that is before the season began, I sat up there and we had a big argument as to whether or not Cam Newton was first tier or second tier. My specific example to you, Max, was this. I need to see more. I know what he did. I know what he's capable of doing, but first-tier dudes are guys who do it over and over and over again, and that's what I needed to see. Cam was out last night. When he gets back, we'll see. But the reason I'm holding out hope is because these boys with Kuechly, with Thomas and the crew, I think that combined with Cam Newton, it's one of those situations where you're desperate right now. Does it look bleak? Hell yes, it looks bleak. But I'm holding out hope for dear life that the Carolina Panthers will get it together. You don't even have to win the NFC South, the NFC South. You can get a wild card spot. The objective is to get in. And as long as they get in, they will have salvaged their season, and I'm not ready to rule out that they're not going to get a wild card spot as of yet.
I mean, I think Cam is actually the least of their problems when he's on the field, even if he's holding the ball too long, even if he's not sliding when he should. He's the least of their problems. Not blocking from him is a problem.
But he's a big solution.
But he's a big solution. Agreed. He's not having a running game is a problem for him. The fact that the defense can't get any pressure bringing 4, which is a big change from last year. I mean, Josh Norman aside, what happened to the pressure that the front 4 can bring? That's a problem. Look at the way Jameis took Tampa down the field in the fourth quarter. Tampa Bay right down the field in the fourth quarter. When they needed it most, it was like a hot knife through warm butter. I mean, right down the field to put them in a position to win this game.
30 times, though. He rushed the ball 30 times, and Tampa Bay, despite knowing that Carolina's secondary was suspect, still ran the ball 37 times and only threw it 30. Everybody was saying coming into the game, everybody should throw the football more because you know that guys are going to get rid of the football quicker. And more importantly, when your secondary is suspect, I mean, you replace Josh Norman, one of the guys you replace him with, you already cut. He's not even on a roster anymore. And then when you take that into consideration and the fact that teams don't have to worry about the secondary the way they used to, they can get rid of the ball quicker, which is why you're not getting the pressure that you alluded to from the front 7.
You mentioned, by the way, the schedule, and they have no kind of killer schedule. I agree with that. And at first, when I was thinking about this, I thought, you know what, given that schedule, maybe they could. They're not going to overtake the Falcons, but maybe they can win a wild card. But you start to think about it like Arizona is the same kind of team as Carolina in the sense that people thought they were going to do something this year, and so far they've come short. They're just as desperate as Carolina. And so you get Arizona at home, but still, you're playing a desperate team, and every game in the rest of your schedules must win. The Rams are better than people thought they were going to be, and you got to go on the road to play them. Kansas City is Kansas City. Oakland is either they're ready or they're like one step away from being ready, but they have a high-flying offense. You have to go to Seattle. It's a very tough game for anybody, especially this Panthers team right now. So even the schedule, and this is what happens when you're just not that good. You know, if you could think of someone as a Super Bowl contender, you look at this schedule, you go, it's pretty good. You think of them as a team that's struggling, all of a sudden the schedule starts to look a lot harder. You can't afford 4 more losses on the season, and I can see 4 losses here very easily.
Well, I'm saying you could see 4 losses there very easily, but just like we didn't see 15-1 coming, we may not see a comeback coming. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, this is one of those rare moments in your history with First Take where you actually have a very poignant argument that is not penetrable at this particular moment in time.
You're gonna have to...
I'll concede that. It's a rare moment. Enjoy the moment. This is a special moment
Stephen
for you,
A., I know you're going on 2 hours sleep. I know you're going on 2 hours sleep. Did you forget what rare means? Do you know that rare, it means
little
seldom,
hilarious.
it means it doesn't happen a lot. Are you sure you know what that means?
Well, listen, last week, I personally brought a dictionary and thesaurus for when I'm sitting across from you, but at the same time, I don't think I need it for the word rare.
Gotcha.
I think we're fine in that category.
I wasn't
but
sure
I
the
will
way.
say to you, again, today, you got it, because I can't, your argument is strong, and the Carolina Panthers haven't given me much ammunition, but I'm holding out hope that 6 playoff spots. You got the Falcons, you got the Cowboys, you got Green Bay, you got Seattle. I mean, come on, you got Minnesota, of course. That 6th spot is what we're talking about right now. That's how I'm looking at it.
Listen, Stephen A., if it makes you feel any better, I picked the Cardinals to go to the Super Bowl. So what does that say?
Listen, the jury, listen, we ain't done yet. We ain't done yet.
This is why people like the NFL.
Keep hope
If
alive.
you believe in Cam, what's up?
Yep.
Well, let's go.
Very true. A team who appears to have no problems right now, that would be the Golden State Warriors. So would Kevin Durant be a Warrior if Golden State held on to beat the Cavs in the finals? In a presentation at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business, the team received an award. Kevin Durant was asked whether it would have mattered had the Warriors won the championship instead of losing Game 7 in terms of his decision to join the team. Quote, well, as it started to unfold, it was no question, no way you could go to this team. And I was just like a kid, like, I'd really like to play with these guys. I'd get wide open threes. I could just run up and down the court, get wide open layups. I was basically begging him. I was like, yo, this would be nice. Then once I sat down with these guys, everything that I wanted to know about them, they kind of showed me. But we don't have to talk about that, though, because they didn't get the job done, and they came after me, and who knows what would have happened. But I guess you could say I'm glad they lost. Stephen A., any problems with these comments from KD?
I believe there is. I believe anybody that should have a problem with KD because, listen, we're not going to question the integrity of Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is a superstar. Kevin Durant is one of the top 3 players in the world. And I hate having to get on him about this stuff because even though I agree, I firmly believe and will never change the fact that I think his decision to go to the Golden State Warriors is the weakest move I've ever seen by a superstar. The fact of the matter is it's his right to make it, and it doesn't make him any less of a person, and it certainly doesn't make him any less of a basketball player. It's just that, I just thought it was a weak move. Having said all of that, I don't think that Kevin Durant understands the magnitude of what transpired last year. When he decided to go to Golden State, you know what people instantly thought about, Max? They thought about Kevin Durant in Game 6 last year when they were up 3-2 after they had lost Game 5 being up 3-1. Everybody pretty much predicted they'd lose Game 5 to Golden State at the Oracle. Game 6, you're back in Oklahoma City. Charles Barkley and TNT, called it an awful first half on the part of Kevin Durant, and he was right on the money because everything that we had come to know about Kevin Durant was not it wasn't applicable. He was rushing shots. He was taking ill-advised shots. He was doing things that he never, ever, ever did. He didn't look composed. He didn't look together. It looked bad. It looked like a straight choke job. And so when you then turn around and you wait forever to be aggressive in the pivotal series clinching Game 7, and then you follow that up by going to Golden State, it brought into question how bad did Kevin Durant really, really want to win? Because had he won at Oklahoma City, it's my contention he could have done whatever he wanted to do and nobody could say anything because he would have delivered the goods for the franchise he had starred for the previous 9 years. But because he lost, everybody was saying, hey, you had a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people were sitting there saying, look, if he lost, then it's easier for him to make the decision to move. So it brings into a lot of conspiracy theories and all of this other stuff. Not that I believe it, because I know that Kevin Durant cares too much about the game of basketball and he cares too much about his own individual performance. He wants to win. But at the same time, you have to be cognizant of the noise that's out there, particularly when it's directly connected to your performance. Kevin Durant making a quote like this gives off the impression that even though he wanted to win, and nobody should ever be stupid enough to question that, the priorities, the level of desperation and urgency that somebody of his magnitude, having played in the NBA for 9 years, being the superstar that he is, still devoid of an NBA championship, the level of urgency that he's supposed to have may not necessarily have been what it should have been. And so when you say a quote like this, you step back, if you're me, and you're going, wait a minute now. What the hell is that supposed to mean? So them losing made it easier for you? Well, what about you losing? Did that make it easier for you too? You start thinking like that because that game 6, man, anybody that want to have a problem with me and anything that I'm saying, I will encourage them to go back and watch that game 6, Oklahoma City versus Golden State. When Klay Thompson exploded, no doubt, ended up dropping about 41, and Steph Curry didn't hurt. He came out of his doldrums and he did damage. Kevin Durant didn't look like himself. Kevin Durant didn't look like the Kevin Durant we all know and revere. Kevin Durant's a superstar. Composure is not his problem. Scoring is certainly not his problem. But somehow, some way, that particular game, and for the most part, game 7, it was. And a question and quotes like that leave some folks wondering why.
I don't follow
That's
that.
the bottom
I don't
line.
follow that logic. I agree with you when you said that you weren't one of the people who felt that way, but there were those who were buying into conspiracy theories, which usually come from people with kind of paranoid minds and delusions because they either don't have access to high-quality information or don't know how to process information when they get it. Those are the people who thought he would throw a game. I agree with you there. But I don't follow this logic that if he loses to Golden State, he has more of a pass to leave. No. If he beats Golden State and wins a championship especially, but even just beats Golden State, he then has an excuse to say, look, I did what I was supposed to do beating those guys. Now it's time for me to go. He tied business up. He can leave. I don't get the logic that says if he loses to them, it makes him easier to go.
Let the insider talk to you right now.
Please
Max.
do.
I believe exactly what you just said. And that's what I said. And then guys in the NBA community came up to me and said, do you know Kevin Durant? I said, what are you talking about? They said, had he won, in his world, it would have been more difficult for him to leave. Because you've worked to build all of this, and finally you are a champion, and you bring that to Oklahoma City. In his world,
Gotcha.
It would have been more difficult for him to leave had he won.
Given his psychological profile.
Right.
Okay.
That's what they're saying. I don't know that
This is
because
why
I want to
I
make sure. I want to make sure everybody understands. I did not talk to Kevin Durant about this. I do not know. I am telling you what NBA insiders have told me. Guys in the league, they say, "Do you know this dude? Do you know how he thinks?" It would have been more difficult for him to leave, Stephen A., had he won rather than had he lost.
That's why I asked Stephen A. Because when you come to an opinion like that doesn't make sense to me, I usually assume you have information that I'm not privy to because everyone texts you all day long from all over the league. Right. So I get that. Given his psychological profile, it would have been more difficult for him to leave. Let me just say, I was saying all last year, when it looked like Durant might leave, it was an open question, and the Warriors looked like they could challenge the Bulls' all-time wins record. I was saying all year on Sports Nation, I don't think Kevin Durant can leave the Thunder to go to the all-time winningest single-season team who are also back-to-back champions to be the second-best player on that team. That's when it looked like Steph Curry be MVP, and I assumed he'd also be MVP of the finals, of which I was clearly very wrong about the second part. At any rate, I would maintain that position the whole time. Once they lost, meaning Golden State lost in the finals, I also said on Sports Nation at the time, this opens the door for Kevin Durant because he's no longer going to the winningest team ever, back-to-back champions. He's going to a team that couldn't get over the LeBron hump because it's really Mount Everest LeBron. It's tacit acknowledgement that LeBron is so great that when he has a crew, boy, it's going to take more than the winningest team ever. You got to add also the best available superstar, and then maybe you can get over him. So I thought there was an opening for him. And let me just say, for those who excoriate Kevin Durant about this, And I know you've made the distinction between what LeBron did forming a team and Kevin Durant joining a team already with chemistry. But to me, in the bigger picture, when LeBron was roundly criticized for a kind of anti-competitive move forming that super team in Miami, my point of view was, look, this is what LeBron James wants to do. He wants to win championships, and he wants to play with his friends on South Beach. I can't criticize a guy for that. And this is what Kevin Durant wants, it seems to me. He wants to play basketball the way he thinks it should be played. He doesn't want to be in a situation with another superstar where it's constantly about who takes the last shot, who's the alpha. He wants to fit in as an important piece on a team where the guy who takes the shot is the open man. And in Golden State, he saw that. And the fact that they lost gave him the kind of just enough daylight, just enough of an opening to actually join them.
Fine. We disagree there because I don't want to use the word excoriate because he certainly has the right to do what he did, and he's no scrub. He's going to be a superstar no matter what team he's playing for because he's one of the top 3 players in the world. Having said all of that, because he's one of the top 3 players in the world, I consider it to be an ultra-weak move, but that's because I'm an old-school dude that I think about the Birds, the Magics, the MJs, the Isaiahs, and others, and my attitude is you don't sit up there and join such a superior team like that, okay? That's entirely different than joining forces and trying to become one, as opposed to jumping on a bandwagon on something that's already existed. My other point is this, to close this out, what you said about why Kevin Durant, you know, Golden State losing and that made it easier. You're not wrong, but what I would say to you is that it's not complete. Both scenarios is the perfect ending for a guy who wanted to leave Oklahoma City to go to Golden State. You losing in the conference finals and them losing in the finals. One without the other would have made it difficult. Both together happening. That's a beautiful scenario that somewhat justifies it in the minds of people like Max Kellerman and others, but it doesn't work with me. He may win a championship, but at the same time, a matter of fact, he damn well better win the championship after making this move. It's just that I look at it and I say, there's something about this that's tainted. It's the epitome of jumping on the bandwagon, and I've never seen anything like this in NBA history.
The epitome of if you can't beat them, join them. Coming up next, the era of Big Papi is officially over. David Ortiz calls it quits after 20 seasons. So is he a first-ballot Hall of Famer? Don't miss that debate. And Donald Trump's interpretation of locker room talk continues to be a hot topic among athletes. What does our former NFL lineman Jeff Saturday have to say about it? Stay tuned. Find out right here on First Take.
You know the golden rule. Those who have the gold make the rules.
Hey, oh. You're stupid.
And then celebrates when he does something good.
Come on!
I was being glib,
Ow!
but this guy's special.
Come on!
And then comes the cliff. Shh.
I barely understood what the hell you were saying.
The Yankees are up 3-0.
This is a team that never give up. Even if we lose the game, we still play the game right.
Swing, and there's a shot. Deep to right. That ball is gone. A home run. It's all over the Red Sox. Are still breathing. Swing, and he muscles one. Shallow center. Base hit. And here comes David to win it. The Red Sox are going to New York. David Ortiz does it again. Ortiz blasts one. Right field. There it goes. Gone. Adios, Pelota. And Senor October strikes again.
The Red Sox have won the American League pennant. Move over, babe. The Red Sox are American League champions. The Boston Red Sox are the world champions. Can you believe it?
It is a chaotic scene. A pair of explosions on the north side of Boylston Street, what was supposed to be the finish line to the Boston Marathon.
This jersey, it doesn't say Red Sox. It say Boston. This is our city. And nobody gonna dictate our freedom. Stay strong.
Ortiz to right field. It is gone. David Ortiz, the newest member of the 500 Club. Big Papi, the greatest clutch hitter in Red Sox history.
The game that I love, the game that made me be who I am, is something that definitely I'm gonna carry it the rest of my life.
He is certainly going to be missed by more than just Red Sox fans. And with the crowd calling for one final encore after the Red Sox were eliminated by the Indians in Game 3 of the ALDS, David Ortiz came out to say goodbye, as you saw, to Fenway and the Boston fans one final time. He's the first Red Sox player to have his number retired while he's still active. But, Max, the question is he a first-ballot Hall of Famer?
First-ballot Hall of Famer. Nope.
Really?
No, that's not a hard call. Eventually, with some context, we put him in the Hall of Fame. Yes, I do think eventually he'll have a case. First ballot Hall of Famer? Absolutely not. Look, let's start with the failed PED test in 2003. It was supposed to be a secret test, and it was leaked. The results were leaked. And that may be unfair to David Ortiz. If you think you're taking a secret test and the results become public, that's unfair. And yet we do have that knowledge. We can't kind of take that out of our brain, especially with a guy who was thought once upon a time in Minnesota to be a good left-handed platoon DH kind of guy, maybe, and then wound up released by Minnesota and turns out to be one of the, great sluggers of his era. Now, look, he did wind up with Hall of Fame numbers, even in a PED era, although there are other DHs like Jim Thome, for example, who hasn't come up on the ballot yet, but when he does, should get in ahead of David Ortiz. Jim Thome had more home runs than David Ortiz, by 50, 60 home runs. It's 612 to under 550 for Ortiz. He had around the same on-base percentage, around the same slugging percentage, around 550, but an on-base percentage 20 points higher. And unlike David Ortiz, Jim Thome actually played the field. He played not only some first base, but some third base. David Ortiz only had fewer than 2 seasons worth of any defensive value whatsoever, and that as a bad defensive first baseman. So he's a one-way player in a steroids era in which he has been suspected and maybe implicated, if you consider a released secret test score an implication, where he was never the best hitter in the league. He was among the best hitters in the league for a very long time and had 0 defensive value. He was a clutch hitter. There's a debate about whether clutch hitting exists or not, but to my eyes, if there's a such thing as a clutch hitter, it's David Ortiz, who, while his overall postseason value, Stephen A., is very similar to his regular season value, it's not like he elevated overall, but in the World Series, which I don't care if you say, well, he just happened to get hot in the World Series. Those are very high-leverage games. He played in 14 of them and absolutely raked. So I do think he gets extra credit for that. Maybe there's a Hall of Fame case. It's a borderline Hall of Fame case, and it's certainly not first ballot.
I disagree with you. In my opinion, he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I do understand the argument when people would say no Bonds, no Clemens, no A-Rod, then it damn sure can't be David Ortiz. But what I would say is that all of them have PED-related cases involved in terms of staining and sullying their name. Bonds, the cream and the clear. A-Rod, serial perpetual liar. In the case of Clemens, sitting up there when he had every opportunity to just mind his business and ride into the sunset, he's going to literally wag his finger in front of folks on Capitol Hill after taking pictures with senators and congressmen, of course, sitting up there talking about, he didn't do anything wrong when your own wife is on the cover of Sports Illustrated, whatever magazine it was, looking more ripped than him. And we found out that he had stuff delivered to his house. I'm sorry. I don't put David Ortiz in that category. The lone stain on David Ortiz's career was that secret test from 2003 where it intimated that, he tested positive for PEDs. He has categorically denied it. He was never suspended. He was never reprimanded, to my knowledge. And so when I look at it from that perspective, it's their word against his. Nothing followed up after that. That is that. Now we get to the baseball field. You want to tell me he's a DH? Fine. You want to use the argument that he didn't play the field? Fine. Let me look at this. 2-time World Series champion with the Boston Red Sox, okay? You got 10-time All-Star with the Boston Red Sox, a career 286 average, a career 380 career on-base percentage, 2,472 hits, ranks 103rd all-time, 541 homers, ranks 17th all-time, 1,768 RBIs, ranks 27th all-time, okay? 22nd, I'm sorry, and 1,192 extra base hits, ranks 8th all-time. You yourself, Max, has pointed out how clutch he was. We also know that 2 franchises had a curse associated with their name. The Boston Red Sox were one of them. He's one of them that helped overcome all of that. I look at this guy, and what he's been able to do. And I say to myself, excuse me, only third Major League Baseball player in history with 500 home runs and 600 doubles. Only Barry Bonds and Hank Aaron did that. Last 4 years of his career, he had at least 30 home runs and 100 RBIs. Last 4 years of his career, going out strong, didn't nosedive, or as you would say, falling off a cliff, like the Roadrunner, beep, 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 beep. That did not happen to this man. And so I look at it from that perspective. 12 of his 14 seasons with Boston, he had at least 500 plate appearances, which speaks to his reliability. The list goes on and on. I'm just saying to myself, this dude right here, 2004 ALCS, had walk-off hits on consecutive nights to keep the Boston Red Sox alive. This dude shows up in clutch moments. He has the numbers, which baseball is all predicated on. To me, the one thing you could hold against him definitively, because tradition says so, since he'll need 75% of the votes, of guys voting in his favor, and they usually vote towards tradition. The one thing he'll have against him is the PED situation in 2003. He denied it. They said it was accurate. Nothing happened to him at that moment, and nothing has happened since. What's the problem?
He was also playing at Fenway Park. One of the reasons, like everyone say, well, Jim Rice's personality kept him out of the Hall of Fame. But it's also because Jim Rice had home road splits and he benefited by hitting at Fenway Park, and Rice was not a very good defender.
I agree with that.
But Rice was a defender. Rice did play left field for many years. David Ortiz brings you zero defensive value except for the 300 games in total.
I want to hear about
that. He played at
Baseball's
first base
about the numbers, bro.
Poorly.
Hall of Famers are about the offensive numbers.
But the numbers count in the field, too. And if you're only on one side of the ball, for example, Edgar Martinez. Edgar Martinez, one of the 3 or 4 best right-handed hitters of the modern era. I mean, you talk about Vladimir Guerrero, Pujols, maybe Frank Thomas, maybe Manny Ramirez. But Edgar Martinez is right there. And Edgar Martinez played some defense early in his career. Not well, but at least he was out there at third base. Edgar
Well, if you didn't play it well, it don't matter that you played it.
Well, no, it does.
If you didn't play it well, it don't matter that you played it.
It does matter because it means you get a bat at a position where it's hard to find a bat. Anyone can DH. You can find a hitter anywhere. Not like David Ortiz, which is why I agree he has a case.
Not like David Ortiz.
But I don't know that it's
That's
a
my
winning
point.
case. He's a hitter benefiting from hitting at Fenway Park, zero defensive value, never the best hitter in the league. And there is the at least whiff of PEDs around it because of that 2003 report.
I can't.
Hitters just as good as him, like Edgar Martinez, are not in the Hall. Why should he be in the Hall? Maybe, but it's not a slam dunk.
It's not fair for you to bring up the fact that he was playing at Fenway Park. If that's the case, they should win the World Series every year. Eventually, there's 3 outs. There's 27 outs. There's 27 outs that occur in the game, and last time I checked, 81 to 82 nights a year, they appear at Fenway Park, okay? So the bottom line is, just because you're playing at Fenway Park doesn't mean it's a given that you're going to do the things that David Ortiz has done.
It means you should do better than you would otherwise.
Not to mention clutch. I saw him smack home runs in Tampa. I saw him smack home runs at Yankee Stadium. Fenway Park wasn't the only place he smacked home runs. But this man has shown up.
He's helped by that offensive environment. And I will say this about clutch. As a Yankees fan, the last time a guy scared me at the plate like David Ortiz was probably George Brett when I was a little kid.
Then your argument is done. Then your argument is done because you're conceding he feared you.
There are clutch hitters. But George Brett played third base. He played a position where it's hard to find a bat. David Ortiz
ain't nobody saying he don't belong in there.
David Ortiz played in an era where runs were cheap. He was never the best run producer. And he brought you no defensive value, meaning he played in a position where offense is cheap.
So we're going to hold the error against him now. Come on, Max.
Yeah.
You're holding – hold on. Let's put it in perspective. You're holding the error against him.
Sure.
You're holding the park that he played in against him. Mm-hmm. You're holding the PED test, which he's categorically denied against him. I mean, let me ask you a question, Max. You got a problem with the car he drives? Socks he wears? What he eats for dinner? I mean, it seems to me like you're just coming up with one thing after another.
Are you suggesting that my hatred of the Red Sox is coloring my view of David Ortiz?
Listen. Yeah,
because while that's a good argument, in fact, it's incorrect in this case. I'm not saying he should never be in the Hall of Fame. Maybe the argument will be made successfully one day that he belongs in there. I'm saying I know a first-ballot Hall of Famer when I see one, and it's not that I'm holding the fact that he DH'd, that he played for the Red Sox, and all that against him. I'm saying considering those factors, you have to do an awful lot to overcome them. Has he done a lot? Enough? Maybe. But has he done more than Edgar Martinez? Maybe not. Has he done more than Jim Thome? No, he hasn't. Thome hasn't been up for the vote yet.
I heard you. I heard you loud and clear. you're wrong. And I'm telling you you're wrong because of the stuff that you keep bringing up. It ain't his fault. I mean, listen, you playing at Fenway Park, you playing at Fenway Park. If we're going to disqualify him, what we're going to do, disqualify all members of the Boston Red Sox because of the park they playing because of the uniform that way? That's asinine, okay? The fact of the matter is the ball has to connect with the bat and go a few hundred feet in order for it to be a home run. And David Ortiz has done that better than most in Major League Baseball history.
Right.
That is a fact. And so when you look at the numbers and you know that a lot of it has occurred in clutch, see, that's the big thing to me. If there were no clutch performances, that would be different. But when you show up, when it's time to show
he gets
up
all the clutch
at home
bonus
or
points
on the
from
road,
me.
give that man that love.
He
Sorry.
gets all the clutch bonus points from me. But just to quickly disprove your point that it doesn't
There's
matter
nothing
that he's a
quickly
DH.
about what you're saying,
If you're
but
a
go ahead.
shortstop, the offensive standards to make the Hall of Fame are lower than if you're a first baseman, because there are more first basemen that can hit than shortstops. There are fewer people who can play shortstop. Everyone can play DH, so the offensive standards are
Everyone
much
can play DH.
higher.
Who's played DH like him? Who's played
I
DH like
mentioned
David
Edgar
Ortiz?
Martinez and Jim Thome, who were every bit the hitters he was.
So let them in too. Oh, Jim Thome was every bit the hitter?
Yeah.
I love Jim Thome. Jim Thome was big time. But I'm talking about in terms of clutch performances.
I mean,
really?
No, he was not as clutch as David Ortiz. I
All
agree
right,
with that.
all right.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Ortiz is a special clutch player. That is true.
Thank you.
All right.
Hall of Fame.
Let's
Maybe a
leave
bit.
it. Let's
Clutch.
leave it there, guys. Agree to disagree. So you heard them on Big Papi's legacy. Max says he is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Stephen A. says he absolutely is. We want to know what you think at home. Go on Twitter now. Vote. We'll share those results a little later in the show. But coming up, Tom Terrific. He shows no rust after beating the Browns on Sunday, and even says he feels 10 years younger. Will that be enough to change Mr. Kellerman's opinion?
Tom Brady's just about done. It could be his next game he plays. It could be a year from now. But he is going to fall off a cliff. Tom Brady is going to be a bum in short order.
It was fun to be out there, fun to be a part of, us winning games. And I've talked at length about how I've, been feeling over the years, and I feel better now at 39 than I did when I was 29. And it was just, I think due to a lot of things. So I feel like I'm in a good routine, and if I play a game like yesterday, I feel like by Wednesday practice, I'm, geared up and ready to go.
This is going to be good. That was Tom Brady saying he feels better now than he did at 29. They say 30 is the new 20, folks. Will Kane in the house. Good to see you for this conversation.
Good to see all you folks.
Thank you for joining us. This one's going to be fun. Max, I'd like to come to you, my friend.
Yes.
Would you still stand by your statement at this point after hearing Brady's comments that he feels better now at 39, that he will be falling off a cliff sooner than later?
Of course. I said in the next 18 months at the time, because no one plays well at 41. I left out Warren Moon, who had one very good season. That's the only player in the history of football to have a good season at 41. It was something less than his very best, but it was a good season. He passed for 3,600 yards back then, 25 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Not exactly an MVP season, though he went to the Pro Bowl, and I think he won Pro Bowl MVP that year. But he was something less than an MVP, but a good player. That's the best 41-year-old season ever. Ever. That's it. That's the only one. Now, I mentioned Brian Burke's study, who now works for ESPN, from 2014, where he talked about, and the reason I describe it as a cliff, and when I went to research, like, maybe there are underlying things that warn you, hey, the cliff is coming. In fact, Brian Burke's research said, no, there are no warnings. There are no warning signs. The guys are cruising along at very high altitudes. They can do this forever. They fall off without warning. Now, an interesting point that Burke brought up is that maybe natural variance in performance can explain it. That, no one stays at the same level every year all their careers. So sometimes you go down, sometimes you go up. But when a player goes down at 40, 41 years old, the assumption by everyone, including the player, is, oh, they must be done. And considering it's a tough sport, and they usually have a lot of money by then, if they made it that long, they decide to retire. Whatever the case may be, I was saying the same thing about Peyton Manning a couple of years ago. And before everyone says, well, of course he had the surgery. Yeah, right. But I'm talking about when he was throwing his 55 touchdowns. Oh, he could do this forever. Peyton could go till 45. Look at this. No, guys. He's heading for a cliff. No, he can go. The next year he was on pace to do the same thing. Wound up with 39 because he started falling off because the injuries started adding up. And then, sure enough, there went the cliff, and he went falling off like every player, including Brett Favre, including everyone who ever lived, who played the position, Tom Brady is cruising along at an incredibly high altitude. He's my pick for greatest quarterback of all time. He will be 40 years old in August.
Trying to couch it.
Here comes the... I know you aren't talking about letting someone else speak.
Yes, I am. Actually,
Go
yes,
ahead,
I am. I promise you, if there was a clock, you dominate it. Trust me.
Can we get a clock?
Okay, let's get a clock.
Go ahead.
Let's get a clock.
I'm up.
Go ahead, Will.
I thought I was the deciding vote between this epic battle between you two. Oh.
No, go ahead.
No, it's you.
Oh, you want me to make this rebuttal? You're going to let
Yes.
me take the reins here, Stephen A. Let me show you what I'm up against, by the way. I sit down here at the table. You're off in L.A., and look what I'm faced with. This. Can you see that, Stephen A?
That is a list of all 40-year-old quarterbacks.
This is Max's spreadsheet of all the quarterbacks he's ready to throw down here today.
Yeah. Right.
I don't need it. I don't need it.
Right, because you're not going to talk about facts.
I'm going to tell you about facts.
I don't need it, but notice he kept it over there. Now he's referring to it. Go ahead.
By the way, Will, before you speak, I'm proud of the shirt, tie, jacket combination. This is the second week in a row. I'm very, very proud of you. Very proud. You're getting there.
My spot on this show is entrenched firmly between you two, Stephen A., because about 30 seconds before we went on air, Max made fun of my shirt. Here's what I'm curious about with this spreadsheet. Is George Blanda on here?
You know, why are you referring to my spreadsheet? That's what I want to know that you just mocked.
George Blanda played till he's 48 years old. You very kindly pointed out Warren Moon, Vinny Testaverde's in that range as well, Doug Flutie. These guys all played well into their 40s. Now, your contention is that there's a cliff, that Brady's going to hit this cliff. Well, all due respect to that spreadsheet, Max, that's no great insight. That's how things go in this world.
Right.
Failure.
I thought it wasn't, and then everyone started arguing against me.
Failure, death, anything kind of happens suddenly. If things go bad, they go bad quickly. The question is when, and this is the thin limb you're out on. Specifically saying soon and in the next 18 months. Nothing about Tom Brady has told you should rely on historical precedent. Nothing. Everything from the start of his career has said he's breaking historical precedent. Lowest rated quarterback to have this kind of career, lowest drafted quarterback to have this kind of career, to play this late in his career. Everything he's done says throw everything out the window, including, by the way, that he's reinventing how you take care of your body. All these other guys you point out, they don't eat like Brady, they don't exercise like Brady, he keeps muscle pliability, that's his main thing. My man eats 80% vegetables and grains, Max. He won't touch a tomato.
Well, in that case, he'll be great at 50.
He won't touch a tomato because he's worried about inflammation. This guy is prepared to play later than anybody you've ever seen.
So what you're saying is, because Brady presents you with the most evidence that maybe he could be the first quarterback ever to be elite at 41, therefore, it's actually a better than 50-50 proposition that it's going to happen, because you're right when you identify. All I'm really saying is everyone gets old. And by the way, at that position, here's the age at which they get old, and people want to argue with me.
One last point. These statistics always exist until they don't.
Right.
No NFL rushing champion had ever won the Super Bowl until Emmitt Smith did. We always have these stats until they're gone. And what I would suggest to you, Tom Brady, is going to be the moment of truth for your
Tom Brady will break the odds.
Yes.
Okay. Stephen A., get in here. Stephen A.
He has the same coach, the same system. On top of it all, you could barely touch the quarterback in this day and age, and he takes care of his health. To me, Max's position is utterly ridiculous. I've been saying this. I can't believe he's got me agreeing with Will Cain of all people. But I have no choice in this matter, because Will Cain is absolutely right when he points out the stuff that he pointed out. He eating right, taking care of himself, got the supermodel wife. I mean, he's got it all. And you know, listen, happy wife, happy life. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, he's living large. And we all know, and keep this in mind, Max Kellerman, this is the part where I got you, and I hope you. And I want y'all to put me up on the split screen, because I got Max here. I mean, Max, there is no way you can get around what I'm about to say to you. It's going to blow you away more than anything that I have ever said. Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you ready for this, Max?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready too. This is going to be good.
I am not married, but you are. The power of stress, the power of happiness elevates people. Stay with me here. You are a very, very happy man, Every time you walk in with those eyes of yours, you just look beautiful. I mean, it's not just the beautiful daughters, it's the beautiful wife. Everything. Am I lying,
Get more
Mollywood?
compliments on this show than I do at home. What are you talking about?
Does this guy rave? Does this guy or does he not rave about his wonderful wife and family every single day? So guess what? That makes you happy. And when you are happy and healthy, stay with me, Will, as well.
I'm here.
This is something that ultimately stretches your lifespan in a lot of different
That's
ways.
true.
You're healthier.
Can I
You're
ask the
feeling
obvious
good.
question?
First
Your
happily
spirit
married
is up.
quarterback?
The whole bit.
Wait, but I just want to complete this metaphor really quick. So Max is happy and healthy at home, and you're not? Is that what you're saying? You were the other end of that spectrum.
That explains why I win all the debates on this
Is that
show.
why we're elevated?
I must confess to you. I'm a happy man, but it's nothing compared to how happy I intend to be. Y'all lives are the way that they are. I'm going this way.
Oh, we peaked.
I'm on the way up. You know what I'm saying? I'm all right. I'm okay. It's coming. It's coming. Life is getting better. It's closing in on me. It's closing in.
The 48-year-old's peaked.
I have no. You know why?
No, I'm sorry. The younger men have peaked. The 48-year-old's on the rise.
Because he waited to get
That's
married.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right. Well, you know what? Hey, listen. Some guys had to be older when they were younger. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
A lot of things.
Yep.
That's all.
And it's all going to happen, the fairy tale. All right, coming up next, Will, you will join us a little later. Thank you so much.
I'll be here.
We've got some breaking news involving Greg Hardy and why it's likely we have seen the last of Hardy on the football field. We will tell you and react after the break. Stay here. It's First Take.
First Take became a home for me. You know why? Not only do we come here and talk sports and what's going on in the whole athletic arena that we follow, but guys, you allow me to come here and be myself.
I need to be on the table at First Take because I know basketball, Steve.
I've never seen somebody that's wrong so much. I chose to do comedy and act. I could have went the basketball route. If I don't talk about you, I don't like you, okay? But I love you.
Oh, it's going to be so good. Don't miss First Take this Friday when comedian and actor Kevin Hart, he will be here in studio. Always fireworks when he's on the show. Do not miss that and what he has to say. That's Friday right here on First Take. Meanwhile, Greg Hardy is making the move to mixed martial arts. The controversial former Dallas Cowboys defensive end has decided to put his football career on hold to pursue MMA. MMAfighting.com has learned. Hardy, who does not have an extensive martial arts background, has been training for several months in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And according to his team, several promotions have already expressed interest in signing him. I'd like to know which promotions those are. Stephen A., your reaction?
I'm scared, to be quite honest with you. This is a guy, played at Mississippi. We know he played in Carolina. We know he was a big-time player before, obviously, his transgressions, something he's denied despite a judge on a bench trial in North Carolina convicting him of assault and beyond. The fact of the matter is that he seems to be an unstable individual. Now, when you talk about MMA, whether it's MMA or whether it's boxers or anybody in a pugilistic sport, I have profound respect for them, not just because of their abilities, Max, to actually fight, but also the dedication that it requires in order to be great, and more importantly, the discipline. And the thing that scares me about Greg Hardy is that I actually believe that he's somebody that whose discipline I can't trust. I can look at guys in the MMA, and I've met a lot of those fighters, and I've met a lot of guys that obviously are boxers, as obviously you have, Max. And no matter what they are in the ring, when they step away from it, they understand who they are and how that stuff has to be restrained, because essentially they're licensed weapons physically because of what their abilities are. And we have questions as to whether or not Greg Hardy can be somebody to exercise that level of discipline. So it's one thing when you're playing football and you struggle to curtail and harness your violence. It's another thing entirely when now you're engaging in a sport where you have a license to assault folks and you're hoping that will be enough. But I must confess to you, when I heard this, and I just heard about the story a few minutes ago, which is why we automatically incorporated and implemented it into this show, my primary concern is, well, now he's going to focus on fighting, which means he's going to become a more skilled fighter, which means that the probability is there that he'll become even more violent. And if that happens, how much of a danger will he be? I hope I'm wrong. You know, I believe in second chances, and you just hope that people fly straight and get themselves on the right track and do the kind of things that they need to do to move forward and become productive and model citizens in our society. But to have questions or trepidation about that when it comes to this particular individual, and to know that he's going to be harnessing, improving upon those violent skills even more so, I got to admit, it kind of makes me a little bit scared.
My mind goes to, why are these promotional companies lining up to sign him? And I think the answer is that whether or not it's fair to Greg Hardy that he's perceived as someone who's evaded justice or who's unstable, in fact, that's how he's perceived by many, and not without reason. These promotional companies, it seems to me, are lining up, well, of course, because he's famous. No, it's not just because he's famous. It's because you will attract a certain amount of attention from people who are rooting against him, who he's the heel, who want to see him punished for his transgressions or perceived transgressions. He wasn't actually convicted. So the question is, how good will he be as a fighter? Like, will he actually get his comeuppance? And I'm here to tell you that if that's what you're rooting for, that's what you're going to get. He will get his comeuppance in the octagon. Or in MMA, because what we found, look, this is the way let's take the UFC, for example, because that's the brand name in MMA. UFC started before Zuffa bought it. Originally, it was a high concept idea. It was, who wins, the judo guy or the karate guy, the kung fu guy or the boxer? And there was actually an answer to it. The answer was the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy wins. Royce Gracie beat everybody pretty early on, won a bunch of them in a row. And then finally, American wrestlers and others realized if we can have enough of a ground game to stay out of submission holds, hyperextend limbs, and so they tap out or else choke windpipes and stuff like that, affect someone's breathing. If we could just stay out of those holds and hit back and grind them down, ground and pound, we can compete. And from this has emerged a much more homogenous kind of fighting style that leads to success in MMA. But I would say, even for the big guys, you've got to be able to handle yourself on the ground. You need, in order to have lasting power, to staying power, you need either a Brazilian jiu-jitsu background or a wrestling background, neither of which, to my knowledge, Greg Hardy has.
Right.
So if you're looking to see him get his comeuppance in MMA, I think you're going to see it.
So that's basically what you're saying. For those that can't stand him, for those that are rooting against him, this might be the perfect remedy, because the comeuppance that he did not receive in the legal system, in a lot of our eyes, you believe he's going to receive that in the UFC.
Not at first, because if these promotional companies are going to spend a lot of money on him because they think he will draw attention, they will protect him at first. Early on, he'll be put in against opponents who he can beat. But before too long, if he can even get through that phase, he's going to have to fight some real fighters, and at 285, he's going to have to fight some real big fighters with wrestling or jiu-jitsu backgrounds, and then it's going to be a wrap.
Well, for me, that might be the case. I guess what I'm thinking about is that somewhere along the way, in order to prepare yourself just to walk into the octagon, you're going to be training and making yourself even better, at a particularly violent sport like that. And if you can't harness your behavior and your discipline off the football field or outside of the octagon, then that makes you even more of a weapon than you were before.
That's a point well taken.
Supposedly you were doing damage.
That's a point well taken. It's a serious thing. It's a real consideration, and hopefully the discipline of fighting will help him bring discipline in his personal behavior.
I hope so, because the only thing I want to see him fighting first is his demons. You heard these guys talking about Greg Hardy's move to MMA, but now we want to hear from you. Do you want to see Hardy as an MMA fighter? Go on Twitter, vote. We'll share those results a little later. Presidential candidate Donald Trump has been under extreme fire over the past few days for some wildly offensive comments he said in 2005, where he discusses using his celebrity to get away with sexually assaulting women. At the second presidential debate on Sunday, Trump said he was not proud of his behavior and that he had apologized to his family and the American people, but he also brushed off those comments as, quote, locker room talk. Well, many NFL players have chimed in saying this isn't how they talk in locker rooms. Former NFL punter Chris Cluey wrote a piece for Vox speaking out against Trump and his definition of the locker room culture. We want to share a portion of that with you. Cluey writing, "You're wrong in the only type of wrong an over-tanned ham hock like yourself can accomplish, plummeting past the morass of gross incivility into the abyss of depraved sociopathy. How do I know this? Simple. I was in an NFL locker room for 8 years, the very definition of the macho alpha male environment you're so feebly trying to evoke to protect yourself. And not once did anyone approach your breathtaking depths of arrogance and imbecility. Oh, sure, we had some dumb guys and some guys I wouldn't want to hang out with on any sort of regular basis, but we never had anyone say anything as foul and demeaning as you did on that tape. And hell, I played a couple years with a guy who later turned out to be a serial rapist. Even he never talked like that." Jeff Saturday here with us to join the conversation. We appreciate having a player perspective, but I want to start with you, Max. What was your take?
I think Chris Cluey is very angry at Donald Trump, but in terms of his, and for good reason, in terms of Cluey's assertion that he never heard that kind of talk, look, if you take, and Trump is talking, when they spin the talk, because they're trying to make an excuse, as locker room talk, I don't think they're just talking about professional sports locker rooms.
Right.
They're talking about locker rooms at, I guess, country clubs or gyms, although I haven't heard that in my experience, that. But if you're talking about, let's just limit it to professional locker rooms. There are 32 NFL teams, over 50 guys in each locker room. There are 25, just take baseball and football, there are 25 guys, over 25 guys in every Major League Baseball locker room, 30 teams. You're talking about right there, 2,000 plus guys every season. For how many seasons now? Of course, things like this have been said, just because if you get that many people having that many conversations, anything you can imagine that might be said will be said at some point. I think what's really going on here is that very few would want to admit that anything this vulgar would be said because they don't want to become clickbait, which in this environment you will become clickbait. But I also think what's happening is essentially Cluey and others, many, many others from professional sports, are saying, don't damn us, when they hear locker room, don't damn us by association. Don't damn us by associating Trump and his comments and that kind of way of thinking with even a part of our professional work environment. I think that's what's going on here.
Let me say this. I've been covering professional sports for over 24 years as a journalist. I started off my career, before I started my career off at the New York Daily News as a high school reporter, I covered as an intern Greensboro, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. Started off at the New York Daily News, went to the Philadelphia Inquirer for 7 years. In the midst of being at the Philadelphia Inquirer, also worked for CNN-SI, then Fox Sports, and then obviously ESPN all of these years. I've been in locker rooms for over 23, 24 years. I've never heard what Donald Trump alluded to as it pertains to locker room talk. I've heard vile talk. I particularly am alarmed when us as the black community is highly sensitive to the N-word, as well we should be. But white reporters and others are walking to the locker room and players are playing some of the music with the misogynistic lyrics and the N-word being spewed every other word. The loudspeakers booming, and there's no regard for the fact that there are reporters that happen to not be black in the room listening to guys dancing and singing and saying all of this stuff. Having said all of that, I've never heard in any locker room, NFL, NBA, college, pro, Major League Baseball clubhouses. Hell, I've even been in the locker rooms inside of, for a hockey game. For crying out loud. I've never heard it. Not one time. In terms of grabbing a woman's privates, you know, you just going to take it, you force yourself on her. You know, when you're a celebrity, you can get anything, you can do what you want to do. There are unquestionably people who may feel that way. But verbalized and talked about and echoed in such a way, no, I've never heard that at all. And so what I would say is that when we look at it from that perspective, you know, I don't blame the Chris Clueys of the world and others, and Udonis Haslem for the Miami Heat and others speaking up and speaking out, because they have wives and girlfriends, they have children, they have daughters. They don't want anybody thinking that that's the kind of stuff that is appropriate, that that's the kind of stuff that is ordinary, because it's not. And to me, when Donald Trump said that, by the way, I have a problem with everybody jumping to the locker rooms thinking that he was talking about baseball or basketball or football. Why couldn't he have been talking about golf? He owns a bunch of golf courses, a bunch of country clubs. I mean, how come they didn't bring that up? Why is it that it got to be, you know, the brothers playing in the NFL or the brothers playing in the NBA? How come nobody brought up golf? Donald Trump owned a USFL team. But that was about it. He didn't own an NBA team, didn't own an NFL team. But what he is synonymous with, other than his real estate ventures, buildings, and beyond, is golf. How come nobody asked that question? How come I'm not hearing a bunch of quotes from a bunch of golfers? Because that, to me, would be what the billionaire is most synonymous with than the other sports. That is what I have to say about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you know, when Chris is talking about it, I think it's offensive because when you get the locker room, you know, in air quotes, that kind of stigma, it hurts. You know, I've lived in an NFL locker room for 14 years, a college for 5, high school before that. To say I never heard anybody say, you know, filthy things or you know, things that were dead wrong. And what Donald Trump said was dead wrong. And it should have never been said, should have been apologized for, and not make anything, not try to tie it to anything. Just own it. I own it. I said it. I shouldn't have said it. I was dead wrong. But when everything kind of got spun, to your point, spun politically to try to make it or ease the situation, when you go to locker rooms, there are a lot of things said in locker rooms that you would never want to be overheard by a mother, sister, daughter, and I got daughter. I mean, you know, listen, it is a different world. You do not want those things being said. But I can speak from my own locker rooms, being in Indianapolis and Green Bay for 1 year. That was not common discussion. Okay, there would be outliers, conversations, but for the large majority of the conversations we had in our locker room were good conversations. They were not like this. Now, was there, you know, people playing jokes on each other, busting each other up? Absolutely. But to the point where it went with Donald Trump, it didn't go there very often. But for guys to say they never heard those kinds of things, I would be surprised that no one ever heard someone talk absolutely, because that's just being there. I've heard it, you know, and and listen, I totally disagree with it, but to say that it's never been said, that's where I would
just
say,
the number of conversations that are going on, everything that you can imagine, and
but
some you can't.
I think the problem for me was that when you tried to justify it by saying locker room talk. Because even if it's in a locker room, it's not right.
No, that's a cop-out,
yeah, exactly.
and that's mental manipulation.
Exactly.
And you're not an athlete, and last time I checked, you're not in a jersey. So why are you blaming athletes? And I don't want to hear that.
No. Let me whoa. Let me chime in. Okay. And I'm going to chime in to Molly's point with a question for you, Jeff Saturday, and for you, Max Kellerman. And I have to ask this. Trump's comments, is it fair to say that he was talking, dare I say, about the rich white society locker rooms of country clubs and golf courses? I mean, that's what I was alluding to earlier. Because when he talks locker room, is it possible that this billionaire who owns golf courses, you're talking about the country club, you're talking about the golf courses, you're talking about affluent white individuals that are distant from the normal rules and regulations that govern the rest of us, that may have felt free enough to say such things? I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't want to step out on a limb by making an accusation, but it is a question that folks in the locker rooms, particularly African Americans, might have at this point.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I didn't grow up that way, so I have no idea what golf locker rooms are like.
Yeah,
Never been around them. I mean, I've been in NFL, college. I've been in. I've played baseball, I've wrestled. I've done all those kinds of things, but I haven't been in their locker rooms.
You know what they talk about in the locker room? And I don't golf. But I have been in all different kinds of locker rooms. And you know what the locker room talk is? How's your cholesterol, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is that medication you're taking? How's your family? Those
Well,
kind of
I
things.
wouldn't go that
like,
far.
That's locker,
I didn't know that. I've never heard that.
The point is, like, locker room talk, most talk when men are alone is not depraved talk.
Right.
Sometimes it is, particularly when you're adolescent or in a group that fosters an adolescent dynamic.
That's a great point.
But generally, it's adult conversations, even when it's adults behaving like children.
And I was going to say this. I would say the things that I can remember that were things that you definitely were my younger years in the game, whether it be college, right? Because you're a bunch of young men who don't know.
All
exactly.
athletes.
And I'll say this, as a high school coach now, I help coach high school with my son's team. We are very specific of how we treat our young men in respecting everyone, the way that you handle yourself in school, out of school, on the field. You're trying to shape these into good, productive young men in your community. So we do have these conversations. No different than Matt Brown having these conversations with me when I was in college about, hey, Jeff, you can't act like this, right? You can't behave this way. You can't speak to someone this way. You can't use this language in this situation, right? And I was a young guy, but I was taught, right? But when you try to generalize locker room talk, I think it was tongue-in-cheek. I think he was going to Max, to your point, where male-dominated, in this certain environment, guys will act or say a certain thing. But to stamp it with locker room, I think it went above. And I think
no one
guys
wants to be stigmatized by Trump's
exactly.
language.
No one wants a stamp putting on them in their profession that this is the way guys talk, because it's not true. And again, being in that locker room, that is not what happened in the Indianapolis Colt locker room, the Green Bay Packer locker room. Those conversations were not had. If they were had, maybe they're had in private, but as a general whole, in totality, that was not the conversation. They were much more productive. I mean, it could be religion, politics, family, finances, you name it, all those things. I mean, the locker room is where you grow and develop as a person a ton of times. This conversation is a small part, almost a minuscule amount.
And I'd hope a presidential candidate would be held to a higher standard than describing women as objects, but that's where we are. Jeff staying with us to talk Cam Newton. How much is he to blame for the Panthers' slow start to this season? That is coming up next. Meanwhile, with Cam Newton sidelined for last night's Panthers-Bucks game because of a concussion, multiple people in his inner circle have counseled him to play more carefully, sources telling ESPN. Those close to Newton have urged him to get down, out of bounds, or into the end zone quicker than he did in Week 4, when he allowed the Falcons a free shot at him as he reached for the end zone. Cam has reportedly acknowledged the message and said he will do a better job of protecting himself when he can. The Panthers are now 1-4 on the season, putting them last in the NFC South. Jeff, I want to start with you here. How much of their poor start in terms of responsibility should be on Cam's shoulders?
Well, there's 52 other guys who haven't pulled their weight either. So to just single out Cam and say he is fully responsible or more responsible, I wouldn't go there. The one area I would say he is responsible to a degree was the play in Atlanta when he coasted in the end zone and basically gave them a shot to take you out. And when you're talking about your franchise, right, the league MVP, struggling team, right, you're down, you got the Falcons at home, division opponent, all those things, you got to protect yourself. As a quarterback and as the franchise, all the things that you can do for this football team, it's important that you protect yourself. So now what you've done by taking that shot is you've given the next opponent, which is the Bucs, and a quarter with the Falcons, or 2 quarters with the Falcons, how many he played, a chance to jump you in the division. So there is some responsibility for what he did. But let's get before that. He has taken an immense amount of hits from the offensive line, from protection blunders, from guys missing, from missing hot reads, whatever it is. But when I tell you, and I've been beating this drum for a while, he takes incredibly violent hits. It's not just sacks, somebody tackling and rolling him, doing those things. He is getting smoked. I mean, guys are running through him, and it can be 2 and 3 guys at a time. He's getting driven into the ground. That takes a toll no matter who you are. I understand he's a big man, he's physical, he's all those things. But take it back to Denver in Week 1. He's taking these shots, and you can tell standing up, He's a different guy. Now, concussion protocol, all that, I have no idea. I'm not getting that word. But I'm telling you, he's taking hits that will make playing the game more difficult. No different in Minnesota, right? Same type mentality. These guys are pinning their ears back. They know the line can't protect. And he's taking these shots where he's not protecting himself or he's not getting down to live to play the next day. So there is a small amount of responsibility in that. From my perspective, if I'm him, and I know, I remember Peyton Manning used to say it all the time. Hey, I'm going to live to play the next day. Free runner, I'm getting down. Now, is it the most heroic thing in the world? No. But did he play for an awfully long time at an awfully high level? Absolutely. And did he give us chances to win much further down in his career and bigger games? You live to play those plays. And I think that's good advice. And for Cam, he is competitive. I love the way he plays the games. There is no player in the NFL that can take this kind of beating and sustain it and continue to be productive for many more years. He's got to protect himself at some point to be the type of player, the MVP caliber he can be.
Jeff Saturday, I'm disappointed in your position. And the reason why I say I'm disappointed in your position, even though you pointed out that he's a small part, you primarily stayed focused on him. The Carolina Panthers this year, still over the first 5 weeks, one of the better offenses in the game, 8th in yards per play, 3rd in yards per game, 11th in points per game. The bottom line is that Dave Gettleman is the biggest reason why the Carolina Panthers are struggling right now, because he didn't ensure that either he kept Josh Norman or that he replaced him with McClain or Worley. You know, one guy that was sticking Julio Jones a couple of games ago when he gave up 12 receptions for 300 yards, turned around, and what happened? He's not even on the roster now. This defense is a shell of itself. Kawan Short hasn't showed up and produced to the level that he was producing last year, albeit there are reasons for that, but he still isn't the same impactful player. Luke Kuechly can only do but so much. He doesn't have help because he's got to help on the backside and he's got to help on the front side as well. And because Josh Norman isn't there, you've got huge, huge holes in your secondary. Does Cam Newton deserve a small bit of blame for what has transpired? You're absolutely right about that, because you got to make yourself available. You can't put yourself in precarious situations that's going to get you concussed and knocked out and held out of games, because if he's playing last night, chances are he doesn't throw 2 of the 3 interceptions that Derek Anderson threw, particularly one in the end zone that ultimately could have given them the lead and they would have ended up winning the game. But at the same time, Cam Newton is not even close to being the big problem for the Carolina Panthers. It is their defense, which is a shell of itself right now, because their secondary is such a question mark that it's put immense pressure on the front seven. It's compromised Kuechly, it's compromised Thomas, it's compromised Kawan Short, and the rest of the crew on that defensive line of scrimmage with Coney Ealy and those boys. It's compromised everybody. That is the problem with the Carolina Panthers, and that directly speaks to the general manager who decided to offer Josh Norman a contract and then renege on it and pull it off the table because he thought the locker room and all of this other stuff would be better without the guy. Josh Norman's absence is the biggest reason the Carolina Panthers are struggling the way that they've been struggling right now this season, because their defense is not the same.
Yeah, here's the thing. I would agree with you on defensively, and they got run right at it last night, right up the middle, 25 of their 30 runs up the middle, so they're definitely not producing. But your numbers on the offense, when you watch the games, it ain't about moving the ball. It's about putting that thing in and taking control of games. So regardless of where they stack up from a statistical perspective, you and I both know they aren't. Listen, at first and goal last night, why are you putting the ball in Anderson's hand to throw that thing? That ball should be run 3 times, right? Like that
would have been run by Cam if he was in the game.
Yeah, zone read. Even if it's Anderson, run the play, man. Tolbert's still there. Payne, give them the ball. But their identity is different when Cam is not on the field. It's a different identity. Whatever the numbers are, they aren't commanding the same respect offensively as they did last year either.
The question is, how responsible is Cam for the hits he's taking? And I get it, why both of you mentioned first, look, there are a lot of problems on the Panthers. Cam isn't one of them. I agree. I think even before we just answer a straightforward question like how much of the responsibility does he get for taking the hits, we have to say they got problems.
Absolutely.
Cam Newton's not part of the problem. He's part of the solution.
For sure.
It's a lot of other guys who deserve blamed for the problems. However, in terms of the hits he's taking, partly it's the refs who allowed him to get hit the way they once allowed Shaq to get fouled on every play. Because they look at him, I think, and go, this dude is so big and strong. And then also he's out of the pocket a lot. That it's like, in order to contend with him, you kind of got to let the other guys get away with something. I disagree with that. In a full contact sport like football, it's even more unfair in a sport like football than it was for Shaq in basketball. Part of it is he's just taking hits, especially this year. He's faced some really good defenses, the Broncos and the Vikings, and then he did that stupid thing against Atlanta, which is not a very good defense, but took a savage shot as though he was playing a good defense. He didn't make it any easier on himself. Part of it is he's holding the ball too long in the pocket because his receivers are not running the crispest routes I've ever seen and are therefore not always open. So, it's partly that. If you look at how much, you think of a guy like Roethlisberger, because not long ago he was the poster child for a big, strong quarterback who the refs might let you get away with a little something against because what are you supposed to do?
That's right, big draped on.
Cam, in the same number of years that he's been in the league with Roethlisberger, has been hit, listen to this, 500 more times than Roethlisberger. So a lot of other people deserve blame for it, no doubt. But part of it also has to be Cam Newton. He's got to slide. He's got to play a little smarter. Even when they use him as the de facto running back, he's got to be smarter about the way he does it. He can't hold the ball as long in the pocket. I mean, part of it's him.
That's fine. That's fine. But when you're trying to overcompensate because you know the kind of team you played on last year and that it's a shell of itself defensively this go-round, which puts more pressure on the offense, you're going to take chances. Of course, he has to do a better job of protecting himself. But again, it points to ultimate culpability being on a part of the defense, which is by the GM and his negligence of duty in doing what he was supposed to do, because it puts more pressure on Cam to try and overcompensate and make up for what he knows this defense is lacking compared to what they did during their Super Bowl run. That's why I said the defense.
Team's also missing Jonathan Stewart as well. And Cam, stay off the segues. We don't need to see you getting hit by pass rushers, hit by cars, but we have to go to break. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate you. After letting Brock Osweiler ditch Denver for Houston in free agency, John Elway and the Broncos had some big question marks at the quarterback position. The team decided to go with first-year starter Trevor Siemian, who managed to lead the team to a 4-0 record before leaving the game with a shoulder injury in Week 4 against the Bucs. Siemian couldn't go this past week, leading to rookie Paxton Lynch stepping in against the Falcons, who beat Denver 23-16. Will Kane is back. How are we doing?
I'm good.
I want to start with you on this subject. Has Elway botched the quarterback situation in Denver?
Well, I don't know if he's botched it yet, Molly, but the only thing saving him is 3 good games by a 7th-round draft pick. I mean, we all are living under this delusion right now that John Elway is a football genius who's reinvented football, where all you need is a middle-of-the-road, middle-class, workmanlike quarterback and an amazing defense, and you win Super Bowls. And we're overlooking the fact John Elway is doing everything he can not to be in that situation. Max, look at this. I'm just going to give you the history over the last 2 years of John Elway. Number one, he signed Peyton Manning. Now, when he signed Peyton Manning, are we supposed to pretend like he thought he was just getting a quarterback on his last legs that was going to limp across the finish line and take a Super Bowl with him? No, he was signing Peyton Manning. And then after Peyton Manning, he tried to keep Brock Osweiler. Molly, in your introduction, with all due respect, you said, let Brock Osweiler go. That's not what happened. Brock Osweiler got a better offer from Houston that he never let Denver match. Denver offered $16 million a year, offered $30 guaranteed. They never went back to Elway and let him try to match it. So we don't know what Denver would have done. Then the answer was trade for Mark Sanchez. Then it was draft Paxton Lynch. He passed on Dak Prescott. Now listen, a lot of guys, including every guy in the league, passed on Dak Prescott 3 times. But again, Elway is doing everything he can to find a quarterback. It isn't some master plan that apparently was put in place in April to have some team built around defense and a below average to average quarterback. That just wasn't the plan. And the only reason he's not getting called out for it right now is because a 7th-round pick in Trevor Siemian has put 3 good games together. And once that guy wasn't around, you saw what happened this weekend.
You're making the case for Elway. You're
How
making the case
for
for the genius of John Elway, in fact.
What is the genius?
Because he doesn't have a crystal ball. There's no way to know with certainty what's going to happen. However, he GM'd the team to the Super Bowl behind an outstanding offense led by a superb quarterback, maybe having the greatest season anyone's ever seen. and a couple years later gets back and wins the Super Bowl based on subpar quarterback play but an amazing defense. He reinvented it. Now, what he did here with the quarterback situation is he said it in the press. He said, look, I think there should be a middle class of quarterbacks. There are scrubs and there are franchise quarterbacks. I'm paraphrasing now. But there should be a middle class of quarterback, and I'd like to pay Brock Osweiler in that range, which is the right way a GM has to operate in a hard cap league. The whole value of a GM primary value is correctly pricing talent. You have to get that right in the draft, free agency, contracts to your own players. And he looked at Osweiler and said, I just can't pay him that much money. I can't do it because he's not worth it. Well, the reason Osweiler left is because they had every indication they were going to pay him as a middle-class guy, not a franchise guy. So he was willing to take that risk. Yes, he was risking the fortunes of the team if he got really subpar quarterback play. But he looked around and said, you know what, we had subpar quarterback play last year, and I think it's a calculated risk worth taking that I can find a good enough quarterback to take over right now. And the fact is, he did it. So reinventing as he goes, innovating, which you like, it seems to me that you're making the case for Elway's value.
I don't have the energy today to educate Will Cain as much as he desperately needs to be educated. What I will say to you is this. 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls the Denver Broncos have played in. They're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. Trevor Siemian, those 3 games that you point to that he played well, the man was drafted 7th round in 2015, didn't throw a single pass in his first professional football season. He comes out this year. He wins 3 games for them. The lone loss that they have is because they had a rookie in Paxton Lynch at quarterback last seen throwing for the University of Memphis. You got Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas as your wide receiver. You retained C.J. Anderson. Your offensive line is not shabby. Your defense is arguably the best in all of football. And the corners that you have with Roby, with Aqib Talib, with Chris Harris Jr. is clearly the best trio secondary in all of the NFL. I am quite sure that Will Cain and everybody else can pick apart and nitpick something here or there.
The quarterback
about John
position.
Elway.
This is not an indictment of John Elway as a GM in general. It's his management of the quarterback position.
But wait a minute.
You two see a master plan that involved Trevor Siemian, a 7th-round draft pick, rising to middle-class status. I see a reaction to continued striking out on finding someone else.
Hold on, Max.
And what I'm telling you is, I can read between the lines. If you think they're going to win a Super Bowl with Trevor Siemian, maybe. Max likes historical precedent. I'm just telling you, it's such a rare historical precedent for a first-year starter to win a Super Bowl that John Elway might pull it off. He might. But you know what? You could run through a dynamite factory with a lit match. You might make it out alive.
But wait a minute. You have to hold on, Will. You have to make up your mind what you want to do week to week in terms of dollars and cents and how it might impact the decisions a particular GM makes. If you have a Demaryius Thomas and an Emmanuel Sanders and a C.J. Anderson who you retained so you can prevent him from going to Miami, and you've retained guys while losing a Danny Trevathan, while losing a Malik Jackson, so you sit up there and you say, okay, the quarterback is worth this much. This is what we believe he brings to the table, even though it would have been ideal to keep Brock Osweiler because he's somebody we nurtured and we wanted him to be that guy. If he leaves, the backup plan that we have in place allows us to continue moving forward with the vision we had, which is consistent with what we wanted. So really the only thing to hold against John Elway is if you're telling me under no circumstances should he have lost Brock Osweiler, and I'm not sure how people in Houston would feel about you saying that right now.
I don't know. I think it's a straw man argument that he had a master plan. I think, the definition of a dilemma is actually a choice between 2 bad options. It's not just a hard decision. John Elway had a dilemma. There were no great quarterbacks to be had once Peyton Manning declined. RG3, already hurt. Kaepernick, not ready to play, obviously. Sam Bradford, not considered a great quarterback, and they got a king's ransom for him. Osweiler, do you think Osweiler's necessarily better than Siemian? These were his options.
Just to be clear, those weren't his options.
Risks.
Max, we have seen Sam Bradford play wonderfully for the Minnesota Vikings. That was an option for John Elway. We have seen Dak Prescott perform wonderfully. That was an option for John Elway. The question is this. No, it's not.
Yeah, you're saying
John Elway managed the quarterback position to put himself in position to maximize his Super Bowl abilities? Right. And the answer is no.
No, you're saying...
And the only reason we're not having this conversation more readily is because you've seen 3 games from Trevor Siemian. I'm telling you, that's a shaky ground to be on.
Absolutely. In other words, the argument hasn't been decided whether or not the calculated risk he took paid off this year, although in the long run, not being tied to Osweiler for big money, I think is probably a pretty good bet. But when you argue, well, Dak Prescott was available, everyone passed on him a couple times at least, but he was available.
That's less than a indictment.
Bradford is playing really well and still healthy. Let's see if that continues. All you're really saying is that Elway, in your opinion, hasn't necessarily been proven to have made the optimal choice at quarterback yet of every position. However, for a guy playing on the, on the fly here, trying to make do with the best situation and not handcuff his franchise with a bad contract, I'd say so far the evidence looks pretty good, wouldn't you?
I'd say right now, for example, when I came on your show and said they should do everything they can to trade for Phillip Rivers, and you both said that's insane. I said, well, at least Stephen A. said it was insane.
All right, fine.
I was met with this reaction. There is a master plan in Denver, and what I see is not a master plan. I see continuous reaction to bad circumstances. Maybe, Max, you're right. He's making the best of bad circumstances. But I see a few other examples he could have taken. Bradford, Prescott, whatever it may be.
See how it shakes out. You're also assuming Siemian is not better than Osweiler
we
for
have
a lot
to go,
less
Max.
money.
Guys, yeah, we got to go to break.
I got to go to commercial now. You know it's bad.
But
I got to tell you, we got to go to commercial.
All right. So if you haven't gotten enough of Stephen A. in today's First Take, didn't get your fix, you can watch him on radio 1 to 3, or listen to him, Sirius XM Mad Dog. And then if that's not enough, tonight, Stephen A. Late Night seems a perfect match made in heaven there. He will be on Jimmy Kimmel Live tonight. We'll give you a preview when we come back.
Oh, really?
First Take became a home for me. You know why? Not only do we come here and talk sports and what's going on in that whole athletic arena that we follow, but guys, you allow me to come here and be myself.
I need to be on the table at First Take because I know basketball, Steve.
I've never seen somebody that's wrong so much. I chose to do comedy and act. I could have went the basketball route. If I don't talk about you, I don't like you, okay? But I love you.
I want that jacket he has. Don't miss First Take this Friday when comedian and actor Kevin Hart will be here in studio. Always fireworks when he's on the show, so you don't want to miss that and what he has to say. That's Friday right here on First Take. So most of you start your day with Stephen A. right here on First Take, but you can catch him before you go to bed as well, because he will be a special guest on Jimmy Kimmel Live tonight. Stephen A., are you excited for your late night?
Of course I'm excited. I think late night is in my future someday. Not in the immediate future. Don't worry. I'm not leaving in the mornings, but I am a late night kind of guy. It's actually, I'm more up during late night than I am in the morning. So that's just how I roll. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too, although as soon as I wake up, Stephen A. Smith. When I go to sleep, Stephen A. Smith. It's everywhere I turn, it's Stephen A. Smith berating me for something.